Everybody, my name is Queen Renee. So today I got some story time for y'all. I'm gonna try to make this quick. I'm actually getting ready to go live with my girl. I am Chi on Instagram, and so I'm getting ready to do that. So I just gotta get my makeup on and everything, but we are going to do a story time. So this is actually going to be a story time about my experience with my oldest son's father. So let's get started. Alright, so first of all, those that know me probably have heard this story before. It's nothing like that I keep private or whatever. So, starting out, I'm going to tell you guys how I met him, how we ended up together, and all of that. So, let's get started. So, I had a friend that was, her name was Tamara, and she was dating this guy. And on New Year's Eve, he had, the guy that she was dating, his cousin was coming over and wanted to meet somebody or whatever. So she was trying to hook me and his cousin up. And his cousin name was Dirty. Well, that's what they called him. And he was really my type of guy, you know. He was tall, he was dark. And actually, I thought he was pretty nice, a pretty nice guy. But he thought that he was going to get the draws that night, and it really did not happen. The fact of the matter is that at the time that I met him, I was actually I had just turned 17 that October. Before, in 1989, I turned 17. And so this was New Year's Eve. And I went over there to meet this guy or whatever. And him and I actually did not end up having sex or anything. He thought he was going to get it, but he didn't. So, but we exchanged phone numbers. Well, actually, he gave me his phone number to call. And back then, everybody didn't have cell phones. So, it wasn't a normal thing for a person to give you like their cell phone number, because most people didn't have them. So, anyway, I ended up trying to call him a few times, and it come to find out that the number that he actually gave me was actually his cousin's that was dating my friend Tamara, his mom's phone number, like their house number. So I was like, okay, whatever, you know. So I'm calling, and he's never there when I call, apparently. This guy always answers the phone, and apparently it was his cousin. So, another one of their cousins. And he actually started trying to talk to me. And so he was like, I gave Dirty your phone number or your message or whatever, and he really ain't interested, da 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 da. I told him to call you. I told him you've been calling. And, you know, he just, he said, yeah, whatever. So, I felt some type of way. I was like, okay, screw this, you know, whatever. Ain't no big deal. Cause one thing, I ain't never been hard pressed for finding no dude. But anyway, so his cousin just continues to try to keep talking to me. So by this time, you know, they had caller ID and all that kind of stuff. So he had been trying to talk, and I'm like, you know, whatever. This guy was older, you know, I didn't really, and I didn't know him, so we just started talking on the phone. And by us talking on the phone, we struck up this little situation, I guess. Now, mind you, I'm 17 years old. I'm a senior in high school at the time, and I actually go to college half a day. So I'll go to school, I go to regular school, high school, for half a day, and then I will go to college in the afternoon. Now the kicker of that is that my mother, my parents at the time, my parents thought that I went to college every day in the afternoon, but that wasn't the case. I actually only went 3 days a week. So there were 2 extra days of my, you know, of the week that I had to mess around. And those that know me know I cuss like a sailor, so I'm trying not to do that here. But anyway, so I ended up starting to go to Janesville, which is where he was staying, and I lived actually in Beloit, Wisconsin. So I would catch the city bus, the express bus that took you to Janesville. I would catch that bus to go see him. So the couple of times that I did go out there to see him, you know, it was okay. When I met him, he actually was not the type of guy that I would have dated. He was not attractive. I was not attracted to him at all, physically. But I was trying to be grown. Now, this is where young women that you know, you young girls out there that are listening to me, y'all got to remember that you're not grown. And when we think we're grown, we get ourselves into a lot of trouble that we don't need to be in. So, moving on. So, I started, quote unquote, dating this man. And to find out that, you know, the truth about it, of it all, is I was 17. He actually was 27 years old at the time. Now, when I started talking to him, I did not know he was that old. But I knew, you know, quite early on or whatever. So it really wasn't like I got duped or nothing like that. So I started dealing with this dude. I'm breaking, you know, rules by going out there anyways. So go out there, and I ended up, it ended up that I decided, we kind of dated around for like from January to March. So, quote unquote dated, whatever. So, I was going out there to see him until around about March. And in March, I decided that I really did not like this guy. Because I felt like, you know, I'm like, his attitude is really stink. At 17, you know, you kind of don't know, you're kind of new to the game, and you just kind of don't know, you know, how men should treat you or should talk to you, unless, you know, you got a good father around to teach those things. Now, I did have a dad, but my dad is a whole nother story. So anyway, I actually stopped talking to this man in March because I just did not like the way that he talked to me. I thought that he was really mean, you know, in some cases, in some, you know, aspects of the way that he talked to me. and treated me. And I was like, you know what, you can't really, you can't really be telling me what to do. I'm my own woman, I'm my own person. So anyway, needless to say, I'm dragging on and I need to hurry up. So anyway, I stopped talking to this guy in March. Well, shortly thereafter, I actually went to family planning because I was like, I probably need to get on pill, because it seems like, by this time I had been having sex on a regular basis, with him or whatever. But I felt like, and I wasn't on any birth control, which was really stupid on my behalf, but you live and you learn. But anyway, if I hadn't have done it, I wouldn't have my son, and he is absolutely amazing. He's an amazing young man. And so anyway, I end up with my son. And I end up finding out I'm pregnant. So I was not going to tell him at all. But my mother, once my mother found out I was pregnant, my mother was adamant that I had to tell him that I was pregnant. I did not want to tell him because at this point I really realized that I didn't like him and I didn't like his attitude, and I was like, I don't want to have nothing to do with him, and I don't want him around my kid or whatever. So mind you, I'm 17, and I'm like, and I could do this by myself type stuff. So anyway, my mom shortchanged all of that because my mom was like, no, you're gonna call them and tell him that you're pregnant. So when I called to tell him that I was pregnant, I found out that he had actually moved back to Chicago. And I was grateful at that point, and I was like, good, My mother then informed me, nope, you're going to call back and you're going to tell his cousin, you're going to tell him that you're pregnant by this man. So I ended up calling back and I told him, to let him know that I was pregnant. So months go on. I find I'm due in November. No, I was due at the end of October actually. And my birthday is October 2nd. So I was due at the end of October. And I'm at home one day, and my cousin, who was my best friend at the time, she calls me and she's like, you'll never guess who just came over to my house looking for you. And I'm like, who? And as she says, we're talking, my doorbell rings, because we lived right around the corner from each other. So my doorbell rings and I'm like, who? And as I opened the door, she's saying his name. And I'm like, what? And when I opened the door and she said his name and he's standing right there, I slammed the door in his face. So this was in October that he actually showed up. And then I had to get my stuff together, and I was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, I heard you was pregnant, woo woo. And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, you don't look pregnant. Okay, so I've always been a big girl. So when I was pregnant with my son, I actually lost a ton of weight. But so I was pregnant, but I still looked like my same size, because after I had my son, I didn't have any stomach or nothing. Just I was just flat in front after I had my son. So anyway, I'm like, whatever, dude, So he's like, yeah, I heard you was pregnant, blah blah blah, and I was coming to see about that. I'm thinking to myself, why are you here? And who told you to go to my cousin's house? So anyway, we end up I told him I was pregnant or whatever. Told him when I was due. But my son was actually 2 weeks late. And I didn't want him to come to the hospital, but then my mom was like, you need to call him and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of, you know, I probably wouldn't even never got with this dude had my mother just kind of left things alone, you know. If I hadn't listened to my mom and I had went with my first mind, which was not to have any dealings with this guy at all, it probably would have saved me a whole lot of trouble. But needless to say, that was not the case. So anyways, I end up having my son, and I still don't go back with him right away. So one night I was out, and I went to a club and I met this guy. And I thought this guy was the finest guy I had ever laid eyes on up until then, you know. And I just thought he was just so fine. He actually, this guy that I met that night, he says, he gave me a ride home and everything, and he asked, I told him, I said, well, I have to go and pick up my son. And he was like, oh, you got a baby? You got a kid or whatever? And I was like, yeah, I got a little boy. He was like, oh, okay. So he gave me a ride to go pick up my son. And when I came out, my son was in the little carrier. And he said, wow, he's brand new. And I'm like, yeah, I just had him last month or whatever. He was like, probably like, he was like more than a month old, because he might have been like 2 months old by this time, because I had a cesarean, so I know I wasn't out before 6 weeks, and probably a while after, because my mom was, you know, my mom. So anyway, and he's like, oh, okay. He said, so he was like, well, I'm sorry, but I think I need to tell you this is not going to work. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, me and you or whatever. And I was like, and why do you say that? And he's like, because it's my experience that when a woman has a new baby with a guy, she usually ends up going back to that baby's father. And you know, so I just really kind of tend not to want to deal with women that have new babies. And I was like, all right, whatever. And I was like, you really don't have to worry about that, because that's not going to happen. Well, lo and behold, it did happen. But the thing about it is that particular guy, I end up having a child with him later, about 2 years later. We ended up in a relationship for a while. So anyway, moving on. So I ended up going back out with my baby's dad. I really kind of, actually to this day, cannot tell you how that really happened. I don't know. I don't really remember how we ended up back there. I know that one aspect of it was the fact that I did not want my son not to know his father. I have got out of that whole, you know, I don't want him in my son's life type deal. And I was like, you know what, I need to at least give him a chance. So that's what I did. I gave him a chance to be in his son's life. So once we got back together and started dating, I used to go to his sister's house with him to on the weekends, some weekends, and spend the weekend there with my son. So that would have been the first, that was the first time he ever put his hands on me. He actually, we were having a conversation, and he was saying some real kind of bogus stuff about my mom or whatever, and how my mom is always in our business and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, don't, pretty much don't say nothing about my mom. What if I said something about your mother? You wouldn't like it if I said, talk crap about your mom. And so he got really upset, and he was like, don't you never say nothing about my mama. My mama is dead. And I was like, I'm not saying anything about your mother. I'm just saying, what if I did say something about your mother the way that you're saying stuff about mine? You wouldn't like that. So back and forth, and he's getting madder. And so when he ended up, he slapped me in my face. And I was just like dumbfounded, like, how dare you? How dare you put your hands on me? I don't even, what is wrong with you? So at this point, I was like, you know what? I want to go. I want to go home. I'm going to call my dad and have my dad come and pick me up because I want out of here. So he tells me, he's like, you can go if you want to, but you ain't taking my son nowhere. And I'm like, dude, you can't hold my kid hostage up in here. So I was like, I'm going to call my dad, and my dad's going to come here, and my dad's going to come and get me. And his sister, Parita, God rest her soul, she was such a sweet lady. And she was like, she begged me that, she was like, don't go, just stay, you don't even have to be bothered with him. You don't have to talk to him, da 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 da. She was like, but don't go, because I don't really have nobody to talk to or whatever, because she was kind of there by herself. They had family there, but she really just wasn't dealing with them too much or something at the time. I really don't know exactly what was going on, and it really wasn't any of my business. So, but all I know is she was like so nice, and such a nice and sweet person, that I couldn't believe that she was his sister. So anyway, she convinced me to stay, so I did stay. And we actually ended up making up, but that was the first time he put his hands on me. Shortly thereafter, I actually moved out of my parents' house and got a place. And the reason that I got a place was because he had told me that he didn't have, like, he was having issues or whatever with his auntie, and he didn't want to stay there no more, or he couldn't stay there no more or something. And so I ended up moving out and renting this apartment so that he would have a place to stay. Now mind you, I did not have to do that, and I was the person paying all the bills, paid the rent, all of that. He never paid not one dime for nothing. Y'all see my hair is just swelling up as I'm talking. I just pressed this stuff. It is so humid here till my hair can't last long enough for me to even get it put up. But anyway, so I end up getting this place, and we move in together. Now mind you, I need you guys to hear this. We only actually lived together. We lived together technically 3 months. Out of the 3 months that we lived together, he actually was in jail for like 30 days of those 3 months that we were together. So lived together. So there ended up only being like a 2-month time frame that we were together. And a lot of stuff jumped off. A lot of things happened in those 3 months that we were there at that place. So he used to just come in and he would just start for nothing. I wouldn't have to do anything. I would just be at the house or whatever, and I didn't really go anywhere much, because I was a new mom, And I just really didn't, like I said, I just really didn't go too many places. And so it just be me and my baby at the house most of the time, because he would get up like real early in the morning and he would leave, and then he wouldn't show back up until like late at night. So it'd be like 1 o'clock in the morning type deal. And this was like pretty much an everyday thing. But he always seemed to start have an issue, you know, when he come in or whatever. And mind you, I'm real petty, and I don't really care. But I'm just really like this really petty person. I can be. So when it started out that he, you know, decided that our relationship was going to be an abusive relationship, I'm real stubborn too. So I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go back to my mom's house, and because I didn't want them to think, you know, that I couldn't handle being out on my own. So I was just like, I'm gonna tough it out, you know, and I'm stronger than this, you know, I could take this, I'm good. So with all that being said, he actually, like, he would come in and he would jump on me, and we'd fight. Like, we fought all the time, like all the time, and we would get to fighting, and he would just go bananas, you know. And actually, and I hadn't even done anything, I just be at home. So one particular day, I remember him jumping on me. Actually, he slapped me in front of this white guy. So he had brung this guy over to the house, and the guy that he brung to the house, I don't know, one of his little flunky friends, I guess, had asked if he was like, ma'am, may I use your phone book? And I'm like, sure, you know, but at the time I was in the middle of feeding my child. I was feeding my baby. So when he asked me could he use the phone book, I was like, sure, no problem. And I asked him, I said, well, can you go and can you get him the phone book? And when I said that, he slapped the dog out of me. And I was just like, really, I think it was more so along the lines of just being embarrassed. Because the only other person he'd ever slapped me in front of was his sister, and that was one time. But this time, you know, it's this white guy in here, and you slap me in front of this man. I don't even know this dude, and you just go upside my head in front of this man. So I was more so embarrassed than anything, I think, than hurt, you know. So, and he was like, you get up and get it. Like, and I'm just sitting there like, are you insane? So I didn't move. I still didn't go get the phone book. I'm just sitting there like, you know, I want to say what I said, but I ain't gonna say. So anyway, he ended up going to get the phone book or whatever. While he was gone in the room to get the phone book, the man was like, the guy that he was with was like, ma'am, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I didn't mean for that to happen. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, you know what? It don't have nothing to do with you. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. You don't have to apologize because you didn't do anything. I said, that's him. I said, that's what he does. He was like, he hits you like that all the time? I'm like, yep, whenever he gets ready. So he's looking at me like, oh my God, this poor lady. So after he gets the oh shoot, it's almost time to go. After he gets the phone book or whatever, and they leave or whatever, and I'm just like, you know, things just kind of go on, whatever. So that was like pretty much my existence with him. I never knew how he was gonna what mood he was going to be in, how he was going to be when he, you know, what we were going to have to argue about when he got there. All of that. I just never knew. So he, the last straw of our relationship ended up being because